Hi again, Fedragons here. In this video we will continue with setting up the simplest one-host vSphere infrastructure. If you jumped into this video without watching the previous one, I suggest you go back and watch it first, because our plan and prerequisites are explained there in details. Let's go on. For start, I'll create the internal switch. I'll go to Configuration tab, Networking node, and I'll click Add Networking option. In the Add Network wizard, on the first page, I'll leave Virtual Machine option selected, because I want to create switch for virtual machines, and I'll click Next. Although I have two physical NICs, let's pretend that there is just one, because the second NIC is actually connected to the internet. The first NIC does not have any purpose yet, and won't have any purpose in our one-host scenario, so I'll uncheck it. And since the switch won't be connected to any external network, no physical NICs will be connected to it, so physical adapter section remains empty, and I'll click Next. I'll name a new port group VM internal and click Next, and on the preview page I'll click Finish. And as you can see, the virtual switch is created and nothing is connected to it. It's time to finally start with the router. First, I want to tell you basics about virtual routers. Virtual router is actually just one more virtual machine with special software installed on it. There are many different software products with routing feature, and all of them have many other features besides simple routing, such as firewall, DHCP, VPN, etc. Here I've listed some choices. The first three are similar, but the last one, Microsoft Forefront Threat Management Gateway, is so far beyond any other that enumerating it in the same list with other products is kinda funny. Maybe someday I'll make tutorials on Forefront TMG. I hope I'll do so. But in this video, for our purposes, I'll select simpler but still very good product, DD-WRT. In order to download everything needed for installing DD-WRT router, I'll configure the internet address in our virtual machine with public IP address. This configuration I'll change immediately after the router is set up. The virtual machine is already running, so I'll open it in the console window. I'll log in, of course. I'll right-click network icon in the notification area of the taskbar and select Open Network and Sharing Center. I'll select Change Adapter Settings here. Right-click Network Adapter and select Properties. Here I'll select TCP/IP version 4. Click Properties. And since I want to set static IP address, I select this second option, and here I'll enter my public static IP. But be careful, it is not the IP address we are using for managing ESXi host. As I told in the previous video, we must have at least two public IP addresses assigned to the physical NIC. One of them must be used exclusively for connecting to and managing ESXi host. For example, this IP address we are using while connecting to the host in the vSphere client. This IP address cannot be used here. It's very important. Here we should enter the other public IP address, so I'll enter it. Subnet mask, default gateway, preferred DNS server, and alternate DNS server. All the values I've entered here I've got from my service provider. I'll click OK, close, and if entered values are correct, I should have internet access now. I'll test it by browse to the Google, let's say, and obviously we do have internet access. The first thing we need to download is DD-WRT image, so I'll go to DD-WRT FTP site. I'll select Others, Echo, Brainslayer, 2012, and here we should choose the software version. We'll avoid testing versions. And I've tested previous versions and I've discovered that these three versions released in June and July are having issues with OpenVPN. So if you want to use DD-WRT as VPN server, you should avoid these three versions also. I'll choose this version, 18777. I am actually using this version in production already and I didn't have any issues with it. So I'll click it. Here I should find x86 folder and click it. And here are different editions of DD-WRT image. We don't want web grade bin files, we are looking for image, and I'll select public image. Public is free, full is not free. And I'll select VGA image. So my selection will be the last link here, and I'll click it to download the file. I click save, and file is already downloaded. It's just 11 megs file. And what to say about this version Django? I'm not using open source software too often, but I've never saw such a mess on any other site. Only Chuck Norris can find the appropriate version instantly here. But you're lucky. I've showed you what to download, so you won't spend nights searching for it. By the way, don't forget to subscribe. The second thing we need to download is something called vSphere. Funny name, and I'll try to find it. I'll Google for vSphere. And the very first result is the page we are searching for. Here is download section, and I'll select the second download option because I prefer GUI over command line. But be aware that the second option requires .NET Framework 3.5 installed. So I'll click it, click save, and it's already downloaded. I'll open downloads folder and I'll extract the archive, and I'll start the tool just to check if it's working. Come on, come on. Yes, it's working. Everything's okay. I'll close it now. And the next thing to do is to change back the network settings. So I'll go again, properties, TCP/IP version 4. Obtain automatically. It's important to be to set network to obtain IP address automatically. And I click OK, close, and I'll shut down the machine. It's also important because we need to mount one more hard disk to it. So I'll go power, shut down. Yes, it's planned. Continue. Let's see again our current network state. So I'll select the host, configuration tab, networking node. As you can see, our virtual machine is still connected to the external switch and there is nothing connected to the internal switch. I'll change this now according to our original plan. So I'll right click the virtual machine, select Edit Settings, Network Adapter, and in the Network Connection section I'll change Network Label to VM Internal. This is actually an internal switch we've created, and I'll click OK. As you can see, the change is immediately reflected in our diagram, so the virtual machine is now connected to the internal switch, and there is no virtual machines connected to the external switch. Now we need to create a virtual machine which will be our router, and to connect it to the external switch with one NIC, and it will be WAN side of the router, and to the internal switch with the second NIC, and it will be the LAN side of the router. To do this, I'll go to File, New, Virtual Machine. In the Create New Virtual Machine wizard, I select Custom option, click Next. I'll name virtual machine DD-WRT. Click Next. I'll select Storage, Next. Virtual machine version, I'll leave a default version 8, Next. For guest operating system, I'll select Linux because DD-WRT is based on Linux. And in the version drop-down, I'll select Other 2.6 Linux 32-bit. And I'll click Next. One core is enough, so I'll go further. I'll assign it 512 megs of RAM, although I think that even 128 will be enough. You can test if you want, but I leave it at 512 and click Next. In the Create Network Connections section, I'll first select two network adapters to assign to this machine, and both adapters should be of type E1000, and the first NIC should be connected to the external network. In our case it's VM network, and the second NIC should be connected to the internal network. Be aware that order matters here. The first NIC should be WAN side NIC and should be connected to the external network. So I'll click Next. These settings I leave a default. Select disk. At this moment I don't want to create a disk. It's important to select this option, and I'll click Next. And on the final page, I'll check this checkbox, Edit Virtual Machine Settings before completion, and I'll click Continue. In the Virtual Machine Properties dialog, I'll click Add button, and in Add Hardware wizard, I'll select Hard Disk, click Next. This time I do want to create a new virtual hard disk, so I leave this option selected, click Next. 1 gig of capacity is more than enough, and I'll select tick provisioning, so I'll click Next. I'll select this ID option, ID 00. It's important to select this virtual device node. Go further, and on the review page I'll click Finish. Finish again, and the new virtual machine is created. As you can see on the network diagram, the new virtual machine is connected to the external switch, but it is also connected to the internal switch. The next thing to do is to install the image we've downloaded to the hard disk. To do this, I'll mount newly created DD-WRT disk on our testing virtual machine. Testing virtual machine should be powered off for this procedure. I'll right-click it, Edit Settings, add hard disk, next. This time I'll use this option, use an existing virtual disk, and go next. I'll navigate to the DD-WRT hard disk, which is of course in DD-WRT folder. I'll select it and click OK. Next. Virtual device node must be ID 00. It's important. I'll click next. And here I'll click finish. OK. Now I'll power on the virtual machine and I'll open it in the console window. I'll log in. And as you can see, the new hard disk isn't mounted in the Windows, so it is not visible here. But I think that tool we've downloaded will find it anyway. So I'll go to vSphere and I'll start it as administrator. And as I've expected, both hard disks are here. Here you must be careful which hard disk to choose. We want to install image on the new IDE hard disk, so I'll select first option, right click it, select something Image laden, öffnen, whatever it means. Here I'll navigate to location where I've downloaded the image file. I'll select all files here and I'll select DD-WRT public VGA image we've downloaded. I'll click open. OK. Warning or something like that. I'll click yes. It'll take a few seconds and image is written. Now I can close everything and shut down the machine in order to unmount the hard disk. To unmount the DD-WRT hard disk, I'll right click testing virtual machine again, choose edit settings. I'll select DD-WRT hard disk, it's ID 1 gig disk, and I'll click remove. Click OK. And I'll power on DD-WRT virtual machine, which is actually our router. Believe or not, it was everything we need to do to set up our router. Our router should be up and running right now. Since the virtual machine and the router with its LAN side are connected to the internal switch, the virtual machine should be able to find the router in the network and to get IP address from its DHCP service. To check this, I'll power on the virtual machine and I'll open it in the console window again. I'll log in. And I'll start command prompt. And I'll enter IP config/all command. As you can see, the machine has got some IP address and the default gateway is 192.168.1.1. This is default IP address DD-WRT uses for the first time. It means that we are already connected to the router, that this virtual machine is already connected to the router, and we should be able to access the router through the web browser now. If we point the browser to 192.168.1.1. As you can see, since we are accessing the router for the first time, DD-WRT asking us to enter administrative credentials, so I'll enter new username and password. I'll click change password and I'll click setup to log in with new credentials. I'll close command prompt. Now I'll guide you through the simplest configuration. The first thing to do is to set up connection type. Since we have static IP, I'll select static IP option here and I enter my public static IP address. But again, be very careful. It is not the IP address we are using for connecting to ESXi host. It's the other public static IP address. So I'll enter it. Subnet mask. Gateway. DNS. Give me a second to find DNS. Alternate DNS. I'll click save at the bottom of the page. And second thing, first to tell you, all the data I've entered here is actually the data I've got from the service provider. Second thing we need to set here is to go to Services tab, and then in this additional DNS mask queue options text box we should enter strict -order. You can find much more details about these options at DD-WRT.com. I'll go to the bottom of the page and I'll click Apply Settings. To test the internet connection, I'll simply try to browse to google.com, and as you can see, we are online. I'm really exhausted. We've accomplished our mission, and now we can connect as many virtual machines as we want to the internal switch, and all of them will have the internet access automatically. I want to tell you just one more thing. If you don't succeed to create and deploy the virtual router in the first attempt, don't give up. You can simply delete the router you created by right-clicking it and select delete from disk. This option will be available if the router is powered off. And you can start again from scratch. If you strictly follow the instructions from this video, eventually you'll succeed. This is all for this video, and we finish with the simplest one-host scenario. In the next series, we'll go through more complex scenario with multiple hosts. I hope you find something helpful here, and of course, if you like my videos, please support me by subscribing, liking, sharing, etc. Be happy. FatDragon loves you.